Dating in later life is something people don't really talk about. Everyone talks about dating when you're young, but starting dating again in midlife is completely different because it's not just about finding someone anymore. It's about protecting the life you've already built. And that changes the way that people approach relationships. One thing I've noticed in later life is that people are much more cautious when they're dating. And that's for a number of reasons. Dating feels riskier now because you have a lot more at stake. You've established a life, you've established a routine, and that may be within your work, within your social life, within your kids' life, if you have kids, and it may be financially as well, where you've got to the stage of where everything in your life has its place, it's organized, and there are less chaotic moments than there used to be. And putting that on the line for someone else is a big risk and it can upset the balance of your life. And not always because of the relationship that you're in with them, it's the fallout if it doesn't work out because it takes you out of a routine that you're comfortable with, that gives you security, that you wake up every day knowing where you are, knowing what you're doing, and knowing how your day is going to go, which can be a secure place to be. For some people, that might be a endless, repetitive task. But for others, there's a safety without changing. People are reluctant to change because usually with change, there are things that will go wrong before you fix them. And that's how things get better. With experience, you find out what the problem was and then you fix it. Now, if you don't see these problems coming and you're on a landscape that is unfamiliar to you, then that can upset your balance, your equilibrium, and your general safety. Now, to risk that all for someone is a big thing to do. I would argue that the risk and the reward factor of actually doing it is worth it because you've got to keep putting yourself out there and you've got to be prepared to have those moments where it does all go wrong. But here's the thing. I think if you're happy in your life and you're happy with being single, and you keep that. You don't have to give up everything when you start dating. It can just be something that you do maybe once a week to begin with. And if that goes well, maybe twice a week. But if you always keep your safe place there, as it were, your life that don't let that go. I think some people are far too quick to throw everything in without really knowing what is at the end of it and where that could go because it takes a long time to get to know someone. It takes a long time and it takes time for people to let their guard down because when you only see the best of people, you can create an image in your head that is not representative of them and vice versa. They might get an image of you that's really not you, but you're just on your best behavior at the time. And you're in small moments rather than long moments where, your true character may be not coming out and you don't find out whether you're compatible with the other person. So it is a slow process. And I think we're far too quick to jump into things that we don't need to and give up our calm and our peace that we have. And it's very important to protect that peace. So you've always got that there to go back to. And the more you know and you are with that, the easier that becomes to actually get back to it. And the easier it becomes to not be dismissive of relationships that don't work out, but think, okay, that was good, but it's over. I've got my life. I carry on with my life. I was fine before this started, and I'll be fine after it started because I've got everything that I need. I've got my social circle, I've got my family, I've got my friends, I've got my house, I've got my job, and everything's okay. I think if you're looking for answers to all of those things and for someone else to provide it, then that's unnecessary pressure that you're placing upon that particular relationship in the first place. And then that becomes harder. So, coming from a place of independence and from strength in yourself, I think gives you a really strong platform to start dating again and be comfortable with the risk of this may not work out, but I'm going to get to know someone else. And who knows, it may go somewhere, it may not. And when your life becomes peaceful, you become very careful about who you let into it. So it should be a gradual turning of the tap, not like a full on, let's just twist it around and let it all go in. And I think I did that a lot myself. I was very heart on my sleeve, all in, chips all in, let's go. And I did that a few times, and probably to the detriment of the relationship and to myself, actually, and obviously to the other person, because it doesn't make that fair either. That you're pouring everything in, and I think people would probably maybe call it love bombing or whatever word they want to use now. But as I said before, I don't think it's ever intentional. I think sometimes you get overexcited because of the prospect of finding something that you think you've wanted for so long, and you're so eager to have it that you're grabbing at things that aren't there. And the dating apps do this as well. You know, they provide you with a little insight into what the perfect person is because it's their best picture. You know, they're not writing all their worst habits down on a piece of paper for you. You've got to find those out. But they're definitely writing the best parts of them, which we're all going to do. You know, on dating apps, you're selling yourself and you have to put yourself forward as best as you can. And I think we all think that we are that person anyway. So why wouldn't we do that? I think finding peace on your own is extremely important for you to move forward anyway. Unsure about being on their own themselves, about spending that time, as we constantly say, in your own head, where you can be comfortable. And that's really important, is to be at home on your own and just be comfortable, be happy, and think, no, this is good. It's a Saturday night. You know, everyone else is out probably and doing things, or at least in your FOMO head, as we all have. You think everyone's out, swinging from chandeliers and drinking margaritas, and it's all great. And but that's not always the case, as we know, because once you go out, you just find that you're stranded half the time, paying way too much money for expensive drinks and listening to music that's probably not your taste. So, nights out always seem better in our heads than sometimes they actually are. But giving all of your piece up is a gamble that for the individual and for lots of you, I know you're not willing to take anymore, because you're so comfortable in a good way that you're thinking, right, I'm done with this. I'm done with dating. It was a waste of time. Why do I want to go out and put myself out there for someone to break my heart, for someone to lie to me, for someone to cheat on me, for all those things that may be our fears that we carry from other relationships? And that's the question, isn't it? Why do we do it? And the risk never changes. So that risk was always there when we was younger. So what's changed? Time, obviously. We're older and we feel that those sands of time are going through the hourglass quicker and quicker every time we look. And we don't want to waste 1 or 2 years with someone that's not going to work out, because they're 1 or 2 years that we can put into something else, or that energy we can place somewhere else or with someone else. I think it's a lot more common now for women, especially, to be extremely happy on their own and not compromise the peace and the calm that they've made for themselves for the chance of love, for the chance of someone asking about how you're doing, for the chance of someone there in the morning, or someone that calls you in the morning just to see how you are, or someone there where you come home at night, or someone that when you've had a really bad day, you can moan at too. And they're not going to judge you and they're going to listen. And that's what you're gambling. And if it feels like it is a gamble, it's harder and harder to do. It really is. I think if you're in a place of where you're comfortable with the risk, then it's easier because you don't see it as a risk because you think if that doesn't work out, I'll go back to what I had. And I was fine before. So if I was fine before, if this doesn't go my way, I'm going to be fine again. And I think that's the strength of being single, that you know that you'll be okay. Yes, it might be painful for a couple of weeks, but you also, as I've found, you get a lot better at managing that as well. You get a lot better at getting over that and getting through that. For me, it was just a realization of I'm not for them. They don't choose me. And you want someone that chooses you. You want someone that reflects your own affection and your own love. And that makes it a lot easier to do. Something men don't always tell you about dating in later life is that they find it just as hard as you do. And they want to meet someone just as much as you do. And I think for men, having someone in their life is representative of them as well. And I think women are a lot better at this. I think if women are single, they're quite happy to be single. Where if guys are single, you're always looked at as a bit like, well, why can't you get a girlfriend? Why can't you get someone? I think for a lot of men, women validate them. It's like, well, I can't be an ugly guy or I can't be a boring guy because I've got a girlfriend. And if I didn't have a girlfriend, maybe I would be those things. So I think sometimes for men, women in later life becomes something that they need to give them meaning for themselves because otherwise they, well, what's wrong with me? Am I overweight? Am I not tall enough? Am I not rich enough? All these questions and insecurities, men have exactly the same as probably women do. And maybe women have it about their looks and the fear of younger women, maybe. These are lots of things that keep coming up that, why do older men always go for younger women? Why are younger women always going for older men is another question, because that happens a lot. Maybe it's security. It always takes two to tango. So these guys aren't getting these girls out of hypnotism. They're doing it because both parties that they're giving each other something that they want, and if it works, then why wouldn't they? And I think that lots of guys like someone on their arm that gives them confidence. And not because of them a lot of the time. I think because they have never got rid of that idea at school of, when you grow up, I'm going to have a beautiful wife. My wife is going to be stunning. I'm going to walk into a room and everyone's head's going to turn. Everyone's going to be wanting the person that I'm with. And because they want her, they're going to look at me and I'm the one that's got her. So I must have something about me that's really great because I've got something really great. And as a male, you always grow up with that. And I don't know really where it comes from. It's not even a pressure. I think it's something that's fed to us, that we women are these creatures that they need to be beautiful on the outside and on the inside, which is completely true. But men get hung up on the outside because it's been forced down our throats all of the time. And attraction's a massive thing for guys. Guys have to be attracted to women. They it's very seldom. I've experienced it once before where I had a relationship with someone that when I first met, I wasn't attracted to at all. I thought they were lovely. I thought they were really funny, and I got on really well with them. And it wasn't until I got to know them, because we were friends first, that I actually then uh, developed feelings for them that were, deeper than on a friendship level. It went into more of a relationship. Now, that's only happened once because I actually got to know that person. I think the other place that this happens a lot is in the workplace. And I think that's why there's so many relationships at work, because you get to know people over the period of time where maybe you meet them and you don't think anything of it other than they're a work colleague. But after time and spending time with them, you find yourself becoming more attracted to their inner beauty, which makes them much more attractive to you on the outside than when you first met them. And then you start to see a different side to them. And it's exactly the same as, sometimes you can meet a beautiful looking person and you think, God, that's stunning. They're so beautiful. He's so gorgeous and she's so lovely. And then after spending sort of a couple of weeks with them, you realise there's a lot of faults in their personality, and they're not very nice. And then those looks suddenly fade because they're not maintained through your eyes, because you're now seeing something different, and that ugliness that you see inside of them now starts to transpire on the outside of them. So it becomes very difficult to have these relationships on a dating scene, because you're only in brief moments. You don't start seeing someone for that long, especially on dating apps. And when you date, it's like for both parties, you're spending a couple of hours together. And then after that couple of hours, you're not thinking, do you know what? I just want to be friends. But who knows? It might go somewhere. So you think, I'm not attracted to them, so I'm not feeling that there's any attraction for me. They seem like a nice person. So guys, especially, they won't go again. And I think girls that I've met through dates as well have the same outlook. If they're not attracted to the person, they they're very doubtful that they'll go back to that again. They won't want to. They'll want to then find someone else that they are initially attracted to. So there's lots of ups and downs when we're dating, especially in midlife, and people's circumstances are very different. Some are divorced, some are still married, some are single, some have got kids, some have got young kids, some have got older kids, some have got their own house, some it's complicated, some are, figuring things out. And we're all at these different places that when we're in our 20s, we're roughly all on the start line, more or less, give or take the odd exception, but we're all coming from the same place. In our 30s and 40s, it's like a 100-meter race that's everyone's going in different directions, and you can't tell who's at the front and who's at the back and who's nearly finished and who's just started. And it's meeting someone during that chaotic frenzy that matches up with you somehow. So that's why it becomes so much more difficult. Independence changes the way people date, because they are always in the back of their mind thinking, is this worth what I've got to give up? So they're either going to be completely swept off their feet by it and go, I think it is. But if there's two or three areas or flags that maybe pop up, that will be enough sometimes to make the person go, no, I'm not putting up with this. I've seen this before. I've experienced this before. I'm not willing to put up with this. So experience is something that we learn from, but it also at times can maybe cloud our judgment slightly, because maybe and I was told that I never gave people enough time. I made decisions too quickly. But for me, I knew what I wanted. And if it wasn't what I wanted, why would I give up my independence to do something that's not enough? It needs to be more than what you've already got for you to dip your toe in the first place. Because otherwise, it's like, dude, that's just not for me. I don't, I've got a good life. I'm happy here. even though people that are in relationships will actually say to you, "You're not happy though, are you? Come on, Elliot, you're not happy. You're not happy on your own, are you?" And I would often think, "Yes, I am. I'm really happy on my own because I'm not arguing." And I think our past experiences, especially if you've been in relationships before where you've been at that point where you just think, I just want out of this. I can't do this anymore. Once you've been to that place and you come out of that place, being on your own is the best thing. It's a sense of freedom that you've actually got yourself back. You found yourself again. And then you're thinking, right, now I've got back to my old self and I've found myself. I'm going to be really careful about who I give this to now because I care about me and I want to protect me. So I've got to make sure that when I meet someone, if I see any of these things that I've noticed in other people that I don't like now, I know I don't like certain things. So as soon as I see it, that's it for me. I'm not giving up my independence for something that my experience not going to work out and is going to grate on me. Now, the other side of this is that we could be letting go of a lot of things that could be great because we're not willing to give up that independence. But that's why independence changes the way that you date because our past experience is very difficult to let go of. And we take that into every new experience, knowing that those things, if we see them, we know where they can lead. They may not always lead there, but once you've been bitten, you're very careful about, doing the same things again. So you think, well, I'm not going to do that twice. Once was enough. I'm not doing that again. If you're on the dating apps make it look like there are endless options, but most people still end up speaking to the same three people that they spoke to on all of the other apps. Now, is that because they are drawn to them, or is that just because they find that they are the only people that they can gravitate to? Is it something that at that stage you think, "Ah, I might give this a go? I might give this a go." And with dating, you've got to enjoy it as well. You really have. You really have, because I've had the worst, best experiences, I think, on dating apps, and you've got to laugh at them. And I think you've got to become very good at, not taking yourself too seriously. Because if you go into dating apps with the mentality of a serious approach to it, yeah, God, you're going to get unstuck, and it's going to be so difficult for you. You have to be thick-skinned. You have to take it all with a pinch of salt, and you have to approach it in a way of, you know what? I'm going to go on this. It could be a disaster, but if it's a disaster, it'll be funny because I can tell my friends about it and they'll laugh about it. And it's an experience that you'll actually remember. And that's the great thing with these dating apps is that they'll never disappoint you in terms of keeping your friends entertained, especially the ones that are in relationships, because they won't get it. They won't understand it because it's changed so much. So your stories to your friends will be a highlight reel for them. They will live their lives vicariously through you and your dating disasters, of which we've all got the same stories. Everyone that I meet always says to me, "Do you know what? I could write a book about all of my dating disasters." And most of them, when you compare stories with people, they are pretty much the same. There's one or two that are slightly different, agreed, but by and large, they are mostly the same. They're shared experiences that you have to enjoy for the black comedy value of it, let's say, which is you're living. You're out there doing things that may not go right, but it's a journey that you're on that you've got to enjoy. It's not about where you end up all of the time, and it's not about the actual journey itself. It's about what happens in between, and whether it's memorable. That's what we want out of life. We want to remember things. I guess that in those final moments when we look back upon our life, what are the things that we're going to remember? Probably our kids would be the first one that I would say. And then when we laughed, hopefully re- we're not going to remember the worst parts of our life. We want to try and remember the best parts of our life. They could come from the worst moments. Who knows? Going on a TV dating show taught me something really interesting about relationships, that people behave differently when they know they're being watched. And moments that you spend with people are precisely that. They're just moments. They're not a look into the whole person, and they're people's best moments. And that's not intentional. We all do it. We all show our best selves. It's sometimes not until you spend time with a person that you really start to understand whether you're compatible and whether it's going to work out, or whether, this could be a complete bloody disaster. This is not going to work at all. Those things are relevant to dating online as well, because you're only seeing moments of people, little flashes. One thing producers told us about dating behavior on the show was that it's something that can be predicted and controlled within the right environment. And it's very easy to recreate that excitement and that anticipation within a setting to be entertaining to watch. That's why we watch dating shows. We love watching dating shows because they give us an insight into what we think relationships are like. But there's some very interesting things that they don't tell you on these TV shows. I think the thing that surprised me most about dating on television was the idea of expectation versus reality, of what your expectations may think something is going to look like compared to the reality of when all the smoke and mirrors are taken away and you're just left to life. It's very different. In the right circumstances, everything can seem great. A bit like a holiday romance. When you go on a holiday when you're younger and when you're older, meeting a person on holiday can seem like the most idyllic thing. They're perfect. We get on great. Everything is really great about this relationship. We had such a blast. We was out every night. We were laughing. We were joking. It was romantic. It was everything that you wanted. And that's because the pressures of life have been taken away from it. So you're not thinking about work because you haven't got work in the morning. So you're more relaxed. You're probably a truer version of yourself. And it's very interesting to think, if we were all the truer versions of ourselves, that we might be with different people. But it's coping with the pressures of normal life that we have to go through to provide what we need to provide for families or ourselves, a day-to-day work and the stress of it, and the chores that we have to do, the shopping, the cleaning, whatever it may be, and then fit someone in around that. We become a different person because we're not as relaxed as we were. So our holiday selves and our at-home selves can be miles apart from people. And our holiday self could meet someone on holiday and it could be the best time ever. Our home self could meet that same person back at home and it could be an absolute disaster because your lives don't go together, your morals don't go together. They weren't a problem when you was away because you didn't have to think about them. It was relaxed. All there was to think about is what you're going to have for breakfast, where you're going to go that day, what you're going to do that night. That was it. Everything else was taken care of for you. That's why it's called a holiday. It's a holiday from your normal self. And it's interesting to think that maybe our holiday selves could have completely different relationships in a different life. And that's what being on a TV dating show is like. It's like your holiday self. It's the best version. It's not your at home self. So if you're thinking about dating again, my advice would be to make sure that you know that you can comfortably get back to your independent, peaceful life when you need to. So you don't need to jump into anything. You can experiment. You can take one day, a month, and go on a date. What's the worst that could happen? It could be a disaster, yes, but it could just be a disaster in a coffee shop for an hour. You know, I have disasters in coffee shops for an hour when I actually go in for a coffee because they take 5 hours to make it. So, what's the worst that could happen if you're in control of it? If you're the person that's just created that peaceful life for yourself and you're just getting used to it, maybe it's not the right time for you. Maybe now's the time to spend time on yourself, making sure that that life is established, that you can just step back into it, step away from it, step back into it again. So you know that it's there for you and that's your safety net. If you're at that stage where you've got your peace, you know that you don't want chaos in your life, which I think we can all agree on, right? Who wants chaos in their life? No, no one wants a chaotic life apart from the chaos freak. They love chaos in their life. They just don't realize it either. However, I think if you're at that stage where you're like, I'm done with dating, I don't want to date, I really wish you'd reconsider because there's some great things about meeting people. And you just never know that, you know, if you don't buy a ticket, you're never winning. You can argue that you're already winning because you've got everything that you wanted and you're on your own. But I think humans are made to love each other and they are made to be together. And it is nice when it's great. The risk is a lot of the time, especially in midlife, it's really hard to find it. And if it was easy, I guess we'd all be doing it, right? But it's not. It's hard. But it's hard. It doesn't mean that we don't do stuff that's not hard. I know when I go out for a run, it's bloody hard, but I still go and do it because I know eventually I feel better. So I think if you're at that stage where you're contemplating whether or not to get back into it, then make sure that you're comfortable in yourself and nothing's going to upset that pace because it's always going to be there for you. If you go into dating again, do it with an open mind, thinking, I don't need anyone, but it would be quite nice. Thank you for watching 50 Shades of Grey. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the usual social channels, and give me your feedback. And I will always respond to any comments that I get in time, as quick as I can. But thank you for joining us. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.